Hey everyone, and welcome to this video where we are going to be taking a look at the all-time greatest drift zones across every Horizon festival. I polled my community to see if we could find a top 10 list of the best drift zones in Horizon, and the results are in. So let's start our top 10 countdown in Colorado with Forza Horizon 1. And our number 10 spot is here, at the Carson Warehouses. Now, before we talk specifically about this zone, I do want to mention that this top 10 list isn't necessarily in the most rigid order and goes more in order per game. So we'll be going from least to most voted in each game, and then moving on to the next in the series. So keep that in mind while watching this list. Alright, now let's talk about our first drift spot here, the Warehouses. This is an amazing drift spot to kick off our list with, as it's basically a massive gymkhana playground. There's not just one line to take here, there's endless creativity. There's also no traffic, which is a huge perk when playing solo. And can we take a moment to appreciate the view? Horizon 1 had some amazing scenery, and there was such a cool sense of scale and realism to this map. This is a great spot to slide around in for beginners and advanced players alike, and what I love so much about spots like this is that it always seems like every friend group had their own favorite line, the one they'd always run back to back to back, but every group or player had a different favorite line at the Warehouses. Another perk of this spot was that it was right next to a Horizon Festival outpost, making it super easy to fast travel to or swap out cars on the fly. The Carson Warehouses were absolutely one of the most popular drift spots that players always tended to gravitate to, but let's head into the mountains for our number 9 location here, at the Finley Dam. Now this spot is a huge style shift. We've got some elevation to work with, the scenery is pretty different, it's actually on roads, and as such, much more linear. Now there are still a handful of lines you can take around this area, but for this video I'll be focusing on this route here. What I love so much about this line is that it's got great elevation, a good variety of corners, and you can make it a loop. There's also a perfectly positioned parking area right by the hairpin, so you can watch from the sidelines while your buddies slide by. I know I mentioned it at the Warehouses as well, but the view from this drift spot is incredible here, and all in all, this area gives such an old school street drifting feel that I just love. Heading into the mountains and drifting a little downhill line with a view, there's not much better than that, right? Alright, now let's move on to our final drift zone of Horizon 1, all the way on the other side of the map, in Red Rock. This is our top voted spot for Colorado, and admittedly one I never spent much time at. It's the most linear of the three so far, with only one route that can be tackled either up or downhill, and it's fast. You definitely need some power to master the line on this spot, and on top of that, traffic can absolutely be a pain. That said though, nailing this zone feels awesome. The big sweeping bends let you just open the throttle and sit on full lock while you power your way up the cliffside. And when you make it to the top, well, okay, the view is pretty nice from here too. Drifting in Horizon 1 was special because in many ways the game never really officially supported it like it started to later on with drift-specific parts, tuning, official drift zones, and so on. Drifting in Horizon 1 still felt like it was niche and counterculture, something only really talked about in closed circles. And that mirrored the real US drifting scene at the time as well. Drifting was nowhere near as popular as it is now, and the Horizon 1 drifting vibe is still unmatched. Now, before I get too carried away waxing poetic about the good old days, it's time to move on to Horizon 2. But quickly before we do, I want to shout out my own personal favorite Colorado drift spot, which was shown off in my History of Horizon video, and sadly didn't make the top 10 cut here, and that is Gladstone Drive. In my opinion, one of the best drifting roads ever created in a Horizon game. Alright, with that out of the way, let's head to France and Horizon 2. And we're kicking off here at number 7 with perhaps a familiar scene here at the docks. I feel this is an attempt possibly to recreate the greatness that was the Carson Warehouses of Colorado. Only bigger, and with some really exciting set pieces. You can drift in between the cranes, around the silos, on top of shipping crates. This feels like a very deliberate attempt at creating, well, a drifting playground. And this was really the first drift spot I was ever introduced to in the Horizon series, so to me, the Horizon 2 docks is a little something special. Just like the warehouses of Horizon 1, everybody had their own line here, but unlike Horizon 1, I feel like there was always a lot more freedom at the docks. People were always mixing it up, nobody had a hard set favorite line like they did at Carson, but hey, maybe that's just my own experience. All in all, this is a great spot to mess around in, but if you're looking for something different, let's shift gears again here for spot 6, the Hairpins. This is I guess I'd say simple drift spot that consists of only 2 narrow hairpins and a nice double apex corner at the top of the run. It definitely feels like we're mirroring the Horizon 1 list here because again, the mountain pass feel is here. But even though this was a spot I spent a good deal of time at, I'm not personally the biggest fan of it. The line is a bit awkward if you don't have the right setup, traffic can be abysmal during the day, and all in all, there just isn't much character to this location. Horizon 2 was really when drifting in the games started to take off. It wasn't just limited to little niche drifting clubs, everyone was trying to slide around now. YouTube videos of drifting were popping up all over, and the drift movement, if you can call it that, was starting to gain some serious momentum here in Horizon 2. That said though, outside of the docks, I feel there just weren't too many drifting hotspots in Horizon 2, and that's not to say there weren't spots at all. I had a lot of fun sliding around the streets of Castelletto or Nice, but it was just so spread out. Everybody had their own collection of spots, and it was fun to drive with new players because you could see what lines they had found in the map of Horizon 2. Alright folks, let's move on to Horizon 3, where drifting was in for a big shakeup. Playground Games was starting to catch on that drifting was here to stay in Horizon, and it was only growing. So in Australia, we got official drift zones and drift scoring. This was a really smart move on Playground's part, as it encouraged players that normally could go the whole game without drifting to try kicking that rear end out a bit. This was also the first Horizon game to come to PC, meaning that a much wider audience could get their hands on what was, at the time, one of the best drifting games out there. So, where did people spend their time smoking tires? Well, at our number 5 spot, the Surfer's Paradise parking lot. So famous, I could have just called it the lot, and you'd still know exactly where I was talking about. There were definitely a few different lines to be taken here, but most of the players I ever drove with followed some variation of this one that I'm driving now. It's a good line, something of an advanced figure 8, and with the whole lot being pretty open and free of obstacles, it was easy to correct little mistakes and keep the run going. Although I did honestly spend a ton of time here lapping the lot over and over with some drifting buddies, there was another spot. The new and much improved from Horizon 2 Hairpins take our number 4 spot and the highest voted location in Horizon 3. Instead of 2 hairpins though and a double apex bend, we instead start at the top of the run with a high-speed sweeper into the tight double apex, and then have a nice bend here to help with the transition, and end with a hairpin at the bottom of the line. I've spent hundreds if not thousands of hours in Horizon 3, and I swear at least a third of that entire time was spent right here, hitting the line down, then drifting it back up, then down again. On my own, I'd try to push for a good score on the leaderboard, but often I was doing some tandems with a few other friends that pretty much only owned Horizon 3 to drift. I'm pretty sure most of them had never even completed a race. That was the thing with Horizon 3. True sim drifting in games like Assetto Corsa, with wheels and all, hadn't really taken off and hit the mainstream yet. So if someone wanted a good drifting game with decent physics, they picked up Horizon. Xboxes were cheap, the physics and controls were pretty good, and it was easy to group up with friends, hop in voice chat, and spend the night burning rubber in Australia. And now this brings us to our final game in the top 3 drift zones, starting with none other than the Glen Rannoch Mountain Pass. This was a location that has definitely lost popularity over time, but before Horizon 4 ever released, we saw the map, and a lot of drifters focused in on this road as a potential spot, me included. So when we got the game in our hands, a lot of players headed there, and it's not a bad road by any means. It's a great location. I like that it actually weaves up and then over and back down the mountain, or maybe just hill. But nonetheless, this has always been Horizon 4's de facto mountain pass, in the base map anyway. The whole line is a bit awkward and doesn't flow super well, but traffic isn't much of an issue, and it's always nice to have some elevation. Sadly, over time, this spot really lost its magic with players heading over to Needle Climb or spots closer to the festival. And speaking of the festival, let's talk about our number 2 spot, the Festival Circuit. Now this is my personal favorite drift spot in Horizon 4, so I'm quite happy it still made our number 2 spot in the countdown. It makes a nice, fully driftable loop, it's got some super cool set pieces with the neon lit tunnels, concert venue with rave lights going off at night, and big crowds. It's got some nice elevation, and the whole line really flows well. The high-speed run-up past the festival site into the big downhill entry is one of my favorite things of Horizon 4. It's always easy to find players to drive with here too, because anyone leaving the festival site will probably see you sliding by. And although less of an issue now, like with the Carson Warehouses of Horizon 1, being right by the festival site makes it super easy to fast travel to, tweak builds, and change cars. This will absolutely go down as one of my all-time favorite drift spots in Horizon. Now for our final drift zone. Taking the number 1 spot, we don't have to drive far, it's the S-Bends. A massive hotspot around launch time for drifters, you could always find people here. I guess Horizon drifters just love their switchbacks. I feel like part of what contributed to this site's popularity is the fact that non-drifters had a ton of trouble 3-starring this zone. I'm not sure if it was the line itself or the high point requirement, but this was a hotspot for beginners and advanced players alike. You could either just tackle the top half, the actual drift zone, or you can run all the way down and hit the speed zone switchbacks as well. It's overall a pretty good line, not super unique, but you can't go wrong with a simple switchback. This is where I made all of my launch week drift buddies. This is where I first learned how to do 360 entries. It's a great spot, and I feel deserving of our number 1 position. Now, hold on, stop typing that comment. I haven't forgotten about the Needle Climb. Although for this top 10 list we chose to only use the base game maps and not include any DLC areas, Needle Climb absolutely gets a special mention here, and in a way is deserving of a spiritual number 1 spot. Needle Climb is a phenomenal example of playground listening and delivering on the long, curvy mountain road of our dreams, and if you look at the players on Fortune Island, I guarantee 90% will always be at Needle Climb. It's not perfect, but it's damn good. And if you're into Horizon drifting at all, you've spent hours here chasing buddies or even randoms up and down the mountain. Let's hope that in Horizon 5, PGG continues to listen and puts roads like these into the base map, and more than just one of them. Although the focus of this video is drifting, roads like these are awesome for everyone, and you can never have too many corners. Although I'm sure we'd all love to put on our rose-tinted glasses and reminisce about the great drift spots of the past, Horizon 4 was a great game for drifting, and I'm hopeful that Horizon 5 is going to keep upping the bar. Alright folks, that is really going to do it for our list here. Now, I want to hear your favorite drift stories, and if I didn't mention your favorite spot, let me know and share your stories in the comments. Our Discord community had to narrow 29 separate drifting locations down to just 10 for this video, so sadly there are a lot of greats that missed the list. I'll leave links to the maps with all 29 votable spots in the comments so you can see all the options we had, and if you have maybe a bit more hidden or unknown line from any game that you want to share, let me know in the comments. I want to drive it. And maybe we'll do a sequel video here about lesser known or somewhat hidden spots in the Horizon games. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.